What's up everyone, Darcblade here with another Pre-Sunbreak build for Monster Hunter Rise. In this video, we're going to be taking a look at a build for the Darcblade. Now remember that Pre-Sunbreak builds are endgame Monster Hunter Rise builds that we can take into the start of Monster Hunter Rise Sunbreak to give us a good chance at taking on the early Monster Hunter Rise Sunbreak monsters effectively and efficiently. Of course, as we farm Sunbreak more and more, these builds will obviously be replaced, but they're aimed to give you a head start. A quick reminder before we get into the video, if you enjoy these builds, please consider subscribing and giving the video a thumbs up. Now when it comes to the Darcblade, this weapon has a lot of options available to it. It is also a very decoration and skill hungry weapon, meaning that it's rare that you'll have a build that has absolutely everything you could want on a Darcblade build. So you either have to go for a jack of all trades or focus on one element over others. The build I've decided to go with is an offensive Darcblade build focusing on DPS more than anything else. This means that it forgoes guard skills in favour of DPS related skills, but it can still make use of the hefty shield if you still want and perform those guard counters, just so long as you use the counter peak performance Silkbind skill. So this is a relatively simple build to create. All you'll need is the full Valstrax armor set, so that's the Valstrax helm, mail, braces, coil and greaves. For your petalace, this is down to personal preference, and then when it comes to your talisman, talismans are unfortunately unique to every player out there. Rarely will a player have exactly the same talismans, but I will advise using a talisman with either level 2 artillery or at least 2 tier 2 decoration slots in it. As for the weapon, I'm using Scream in the Night, which is the Nagakuga Darcblade. This is an impact foul Darcblade, so our foul burst will be dealing fixed damage based off of our attack, as well as the artillery skill. They cannot crit, so won't benefit from affinity, so this is something you need to be mindful of. And when it comes to the rampage skill, you can either go for attack boost or defense grinder. Attack boost obviously does what it says on the tin, whilst defense grinder allows you to restore some of your sharpness when you guard against attacks. So when it comes to the decorations, first of all you'll need to go for artillery jewels to max out the artillery skill. A reminder that if you are using an element file Darcblade, you won't need artillery, as these only affect impact file Darcblades. If you're going for an elemental file Darcblade, you'll need to max out whatever element you're using. I've then gone for critical jewels for crit boost, steadfast jewel to max out stun resistance, and magazine jewels for the load shells skill. So if you've done what I've done here, you'll have a build with a 220 attack rating with no element. You'll have 40% base affinity, which can be 90% when you take into account weakness exploit, and you'll have a strong defense of 581. That is exceedingly strong against dragon, but unfortunately weak to the other elements, but that won't matter when we talk about the skills. As for the switch skills, most of them I would say are down to personal preference. However, as I am focusing on a more offensive gameplay style with this build, I've gone for the axe hopper over the counter peak performance. Like I said, if you want access to a strong defensive maneuver able to block most enemy attacks, take that counter peak performance, as it gives you that strong blocking capability without investing heavily in skills like guard. As for the skills, first of all you'll have Dragonheart at level 5. Dragonheart is a result of wearing all 5 pieces of the Valstrax armor set, and at level 5, when our health reaches 80% or lower, we'll contract Dragon Blight. Obviously this would negate our element if we were using an elemental weapon, but we are not. But for getting this debuff, all our elemental resistances will be increased to 50, and will also gain 10% attack power. You'll then have Resentment at level 3. Resentment is a skill that whenever we have a portion of red health on our health bar, it increases our raw attack. This is kind of a byproduct of this build. I'm not relying on it to increase our attack indefinitely. You'll then have Resuscitate at level 3, which again is another byproduct of the armor we're wearing, but works exceedingly well in unison with the Dragon Blight debuff. Whenever we have said debuff on our hunter, we'll gain 20 attack. So Dragonheart combined with Resuscitate synergize really well. We'll then have Crit Boost at level 3. Crit Boost is a skill that increases the damage of our critical hits by 40%. However, this only applies to the raw portion of an attack, and in the case of this Darcblade, it does not apply to the impact file explosions. But still, as this Darcblade has a very high affinity rating, we should benefit a lot from Crit Boost. You'll then have Weakness Exploit at level 3. Weakness Exploit is a skill that increases our affinity whenever we're attacking monster weak points. Weakness Exploit at level 3 can potentially increase our affinity rating by 50%. You'll then have Artillery at level 3, which increases the damage of our file bursts. You'll then have Stun Resistance at level 3, a quality of life skill that I personally like to use. It's a bit of a crutch for me, but Stun Resistance at level 3 prevents all stun effects on our hunter. You'll then have Load Shells at level 2, which for the Darcblade allows us to fully stock our files whilst the file gauge is yellow instead of red. This means that we don't have to invest in skills like focus, and means we can quickly charge up our charge blade in 3 simple attacks. This also works well as I'm personally not using the counter peak performance, which that move allows us to get all of our files back for simply blocking with that ability. I will say though, if you are relying more on counter peak performance, you could consider dropping load shells if you so desire. You'll then have some byproduct skills, which is a result of the talisman I'm using, including Blight Resistance level 2, which reduces the duration of all elemental blights on our hunter, and Divine Blessing at level 1, which gives us a small chance of taking reduced damage when we take a hit from a monster. So that is the pre-Sunbreak Charge Blade build I would recommend. But like I said, the Charge Blade has many playstyles in Monster Hunter Rise, so you may need to edit this to what suits you personally. But every build out there has pros and cons, no build is absolutely perfect. The first pro is this build's damage output. Dragonheart combined with Resentment, Resuscitate, and Artillery definitely help when it comes to our raw attack. We also have very high affinity on this build, almost 100%, so we can definitely make use of crits, and we also have White Sharpness. This all counters the relatively low raw attack rating of the Nagakuga Charge Blade, allowing us to dish out damage quite effectively. The next pro is that this build also has quality of life aspects to it, from stun resistance, load shells, and blight resistance. These combined with the defensive aspects of Dragonheart allows this build to take on hunts and make them feel easier than they normally are. And then finally for the pros is that this build can be used against any monster in the game, thanks to it being an elementalist build. Also, thanks to us using impact files on our Charge Blade, it means that we can deal fixed damage, as file bursts deal fixed damage to monsters, regardless of their resistances or where we hit them. But of course there are cons. The biggest cons for this build are the fact that we have very few skills related to our shield. We lack guard and guard up, for example, and whilst this can be countered by counter peak performance, the way I'm using this build, it's still a con. And the final con is, unfortunately, in order to deal maximum DPS, you have to have 80% or less health, which can be risky when taking on the tougher foes in the game, especially the likes of Apex emergency hunts, where the damage output of monsters is vastly increased. But should you remain on the offense with this build, timing your attacks right, combined with the high defense of the Valstrax armor set, and even having access to a basic shield, we should be okay. Making it, for me, the Charge Blade build that I'm going to be taking into the start of Monster Hunter Rise Sunbreak. So there we have it, that is the pre-Sunbreak build I'd recommend for the Charge Blade. What are your thoughts? Please leave a comment down below, and until next time, I've been Darcblade, bringing you a pre-Sunbreak build for the Charge Blade in Monster Hunter Rise. Hope you enjoyed the video, thanks for watching, subscribe and like for more.